For this legislation being brought forward, Minister, was to give you the authority. That is what your government stated they needed this for. So we're talking about granting you these powers. You now have these powers when you get this, if you get this legislation passed. Will you use it to remove Huawei and any other threats to our telecommunication system?
To ensure the government isn't breaking the law, would you not support that rather than looking at something after the fact to see if we got it right?
So I hear you.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Booney. Is Melanie Joly, Minister of Industry, on the rails, off the rails? Do we need safeguards? Let's get into this. We've got Dane, Lloyd, and Frank Caputo here, a couple of Conservative MPs, drilling the questions home. This sassy brat puts up such a fuss. Let's get into this video. Let's kick it off. Smash the like, hit subscribe. This is a wild one.
Minister, this act, I think we can agree, confers tremendous powers on the minister and the governor and council. We can agree on that, I take it?
Well, it is, how can I say, it's important responsibility, and that's why there's parliament oversight.
Okay. Now, parliamentary oversight happens after the fact, as in after a decision is made, then Parliament looks at things. And we know how that sometimes goes, because if the wrong decision is made, then we try to repair it after the fact. So what I'm going to ask you, Minister, is this. Why wouldn't we have judicial oversight, as in a judicial authorization at the front end, whenever you or the government wishes to take action, like in 15.2, to ensure the government isn't breaking the law? Would you not support that rather than looking at something after the fact to see if we got it right?
So I hear you, and the goal is definitely to make sure that the government can act, particularly in times of national security where urgency is required, and also that it is part of our intelligence system. But we have already NSICOP and CIRA that are doing that work. And I must say, having dealt with a lot of security issues in my former role, I think that this is an important, how can I say, that it is an important power given to the Minister of Industry that we don't take lightly.
I understand
but
that.
at the same time,
Minister, I'm sorry, we only have a few
dear
minutes.
colleague, I just would like. What is preoccupying to me right now is we passed that bill.
I understand that, but I'm not asking you.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, I have to stop both of you.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you about that.
So, donc, je veux dire en français.
Let me just say in French, we can't all be speaking at the same time. Otherwise, it'll be impossible for interpreters to do the work and for everyone to understand what's being said. Please continue.
I'm trying to interrupt you, Minister. I only have 4 minutes, and we've got a lot to get through. So please do not take it personally if I do interject.
No, I don't.
Here's the thing. Everything you've discussed, though, is after the fact, and you talk about robust oversight with NSICOP. There is a principle in law called exigency, as in when a warrant can't be obtained or judicial authorization can't be obtained. That's different. In some instances, a judge would have the time and the evidence. Warrants are often obtained within a few hours. Why, rather than the minister exercising unfettered discretion over such broad powers, would you not agree that judicial authorization, an independent judge, should be the one making the decision where we can do that?
If the committee comes up with amendments, of course we'll study. So our goal is always to make sure that we get to the right balance, because I think it's really important that indeed that basically the powers of a given minister in given circumstances have guardrails. I think it's important.
I understand that.
But at the same time, this must fit in the Telecommunications Act infrastructure, which is also in line with the CRTC, etc. So we would need to make sure that it fits, and that's why in the circumstances this was proposed, but maybe, Casey, you want to add anything?
I would like to restrict my questions to you, Minister, with all due respect. We can ask the officials afterwards. I've got 2.5 minutes left with you. Again, I don't understand. This isn't, I don't think I'm being obtuse or anything. Why wouldn't we have an independent judge decide whether there is evidence for you to wield these significant, virtually unprecedented powers. Why wouldn't we give that over to a judge, Minister?
Listen, I don't think unprecedented power, Frank. I'm sorry. I think it's an important bill, and it's about making sure that we can protect our critical infrastructure. But I think also that we had already unanimous consent over it. We have a model right now that is based on a voluntary approach by telecommunication service providers that doesn't hold, because right now we have policy statements on national security that are voluntary. So this would just make sense to give these powers and make sure that the telecommunication companies abide by them. By the way, I must say the Minister of Industry under the Telecommunications Act have great power also regarding how the telecommunication sector is organized. And so I think what is presented to you here is very coherent, in line with what is the policy across the country already.
Why should Canadians trust you with these extraordinary powers given your government's record?
So this is not about personalizing the approach. You know,
I'm talking about
any of us could be one day Minister of Industry.
Yeah,
it's about the responsibility that is given to that individual during the tenure of the government. And our goal is to protect Canadians. And this is our number one responsibility, and that's what we're doing through this.
But even when you sat around the cabinet table, we have seen so many failures with this government, whether it be Stellantis or the Emergencies Act. I don't know that Canadians have the trust when it comes to balancing rights and protecting our infrastructure. That's why I believe in judicial authorization.
Well,
thank you.
So if I would like just to answer to that, I think Canadians have already given trust in our government, and that's why you're sitting on the right side of the table.
Well, that's a...
Thank you.
We'll get right back to the video, guys. Smash the like, hit subscribe. We cover a lot of committee stuff here, so check the channel out. Let's get back to the video.
Your government cited when bringing forward this legislation was the need for the authority of you as minister to remove hardware or prevent the installation of hardware that could pose a threat to our telecommunication system. Specifically, I'm talking about Huawei and ZTE. Can you confirm to this committee that if granted these powers, you will make an order to remove any remaining Huawei technology from our telecommunication system?
So, well, that's the goal of the 2022 policy statement regarding ZTE and Huawei. And that's why I've been mentioning this is the third time.
So, clear answer, yes or no, Minister?
I just
yes or no, Minister? Will you use this legislation?
I'm sorry, dear colleague.
No. I'm sorry. This was going well. I know it's going to keep going well, but we can't overlap. Otherwise, no one can interpret and no one can understand either. So let's continue in the appropriate manner. MP Lloyd.
Yes or no? Will you use these powers to order the removal of any remaining Huawei technology from our telecommunications system?
So that's the goal of the 2022 policy statement, which was to make sure that there would be none.
Well, the whole reason for this legislation being brought forward, Minister, was to give you the authority. That is what your government stated they needed this for. So we're talking about granting you these powers. You now have these powers. When you get this, if you get this legislation passed, will you use it to remove Huawei and any other threats to our telecommunication system?
Of course, that's the goal.
Now, following your government's recent trip to China and the Prime Minister's efforts to reset the relationship, was there any discussion about reconsidering the ban on Huawei?
No.
Okay, and I'm asking this because your office and the Public Safety Office were asked repeatedly by the Hill Times about these discussions, and they refused to respond to any of those questions. So I think Canadians had a lot of concerns about that. Now, Minister, C8 proposes a number of new powers for you, including the ability to direct a telecommunications service provider to do anything or refrain from doing anything that you deem as a threat to interest in national security. What safeguards are in place to ensure that these are not abused?
Well, I've already answered that question. There's definitely parliamentary oversight by NCIRA and SICOP. I think that was something that was well noted last time when the bill was studied, and that was added. I think it's actually, having gone before in the SICOP in the past and having worked with NCIRA, they can go into the details of many public safety, public security questions that are key. Of course, everybody on this committee have their security briefing. We believe in security briefings being a key part of the work that can be done by parliamentarians, and we'll work with them. That will be at the core of any Minister of Industry's work in the future.
Thank you, Minister. The Privacy Commissioner has testified that this bill is lacking key privacy safeguards, including an inconsistent proportionality test, which is included in Section 15.2. And there's no requirement for his office to be notified by the Canadian security establishment when a major cyber breach threatens Canadians' private information. I find that these omissions in the legislation concerning. Are you supportive of these amendments to alleviate the Privacy Commissioner's concerns?
That was the question of our colleague here from the Bloc Québécois, Claude Bellefeuille, just asked that question, and I'm very sensitive to that question because I think it's really, really important that we address the issue of proportionality. And I really, really think that Canadians should know, should there be breaches, of networks containing their data, that they should be informed. So I think that I would be very interested in seeing amendments regarding that.
Now, in my last minute or so, I thought it was very interesting that you stated that an individual will never be cut off from their internet access. That was a very unequivocal statement, which I'm pleased to hear that you said that. Nobody has been very clear that the officials were not that clear in saying you don't anticipate there's any situation where an individual would have their internet access cut off, like if they're a hacker or something like that?
Well, the bill refers to the term person, and the term person was defined as basically companies. And so I think it was just lost in translation, but we can make sure that actually telecommunication service providers and obviously their suppliers could be, we can make sure that we define that in a way that we're not creating any form.
One concern is that, let's say somebody is caught up in this. They might not have like the legal ability to challenge a decision like this. There is judicial overview. If somebody were caught up, what resources are going to be made available to ensure that somebody who feels they've been unfairly targeted by this legislation can challenge this?
Like I said, this legislation is not targeting individuals.
Okay, well,
it is
we want to be clear
targeting
about
companies.
That. Thank you.
And so but I think it's a fair point, and that's why we'll make sure that we address it. Thank you.
We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Let me know in the comments what you think of our industry minister, Melanie Joly. Is she on the rails, off the rails? It's anybody's guess. Smash the like, hit subscribe. We work really hard on this stuff. We'll catch you in one of the next videos. Ciao for now.